looking back on everything to the moment that I had a kid at 17 years old, I didn't realize this until I got divorced, actually, that I felt so alone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Saints Unscripted. I'm your host today, David Snell, and I am here with Jordan Hasting. Not Hastings, but Hasting.
Correct.
And we're looking forward to hearing a little bit about your faith journey today. But before we do that, maybe give us a little bit of background about yourself, where you're from, that kind of stuff, and then we'll get going.
Totally, yeah. So I was born and raised in Utah. Grew up in Provo my entire life. So go Bulldogs. That's where I went to high school.
Okay.
31 years old, have 5 kids, beautiful, amazing wife, and we're actually expecting another one in June.
Okay.
So we're going to have our 6th, and we fill up a minivan at this point. So as people say, BMW, big Mormon wagon, we got it. So
I'm 31 or 2. I
Somewhere.
don't remember. But I have 2 kids.
Okay.
I don't know how anyone manages more than 2 kids. So bless your soul.
Thank you. Yeah, people say that a lot. They're like, I don't know how you manage it. And honestly, I do not know how I manage it myself.
I come from a family of 5 kids. My wife comes from a family of 5 kids.
Yes.
And we both just look at our parents just like,
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
How in the world?
Mainly just the food, feeding them, and the money aspect. Those 2. Once you got those 2 down, just keep them alive and you're good.
Okay. Good advice for all parents out there.
Yes.
So, have you been a member of the church your whole life?
Yeah. Was born and raised in the church. My parents actually met on their mission in London, England.
Oh.
And my dad is a convert. He converted when he was 12 years old. And that's kind of why I'm here today, really, is because my parents met on their mission, and I probably became a possibility at that point. So,
okay. So at what point have you always been had a strong testimony of the restored gospel, or?
Yeah, I would say at the beginning, just kind of going through the motions, going through primary as a kid, loved it, had a wonderful life growing up. My parents were such good examples to me, and my brother as well. I wouldn't necessarily say my testimony started really growing until I became about 12 years old, when I was able to receive the priesthood for the first time and everything. But yeah, I always was raised in the church, and it was wonderful. My ward is awesome. I still even talk to some of the people from that home ward. So It's awesome. It's great.
So where do we start hitting speed bumps for the first time in your journey?
Honestly, I would say probably about the age of when I first received the priesthood.
Okay.
Somewhere anywhere between about 10 to 12 years old.
Okay.
It got a little bit rocky because I feel like I was trying to find for myself who I was at that point, getting close to becoming a teenager, right? Mm-hmm. And I couldn't really decipher what I wanted throughout my life. I couldn't, career-wise, I was being told all these things in school and friends, and because I had members of the church like friends, but I also lived in an area that was either the poor people were on one side and the middle class were kind of on the other side, and we all went to school together. Mm-hmm. And I kind of veered towards more the low income side of friends because I just felt safe with them. I felt like I could trust them. I don't know why that was, but it's just how I felt. And as I went along, I would say middle school was probably the hardest part in school for me. And I was going throughout my church journey. I was still attending church, still, passing the sacrament. And then when I got into high school is where I started getting into a little more trouble. I started finding other groups of friends that were maybe not very great examples to me. And then I started making choices that were not really the best. But even though I was still going to church, my testimony was still there. It was just small, and it needed to grow. And I wish it kind of would have at that point, but wish I would have prayed a little more. At that point in my life, my senior year, I actually had my first daughter at 17 years old. And with my now ex-wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, and then we got married eventually. But that threw me for a loop.
Sure,
because
as it would.
Yeah. So 17 years old, had my first kid, and it's a blessing now, but then it was a trial. My girlfriend at the time, I would work 2 jobs. She would stay at home with the baby. We both graduated early from high school, which was a big blessing in general to be able to do so. And then before we got married, like about a year later, she was pregnant with our second child. And I'm just sitting here like, what am I doing with my life? Like what, I'm working hard. I was working on cars at the time and loved it, but it was stressful and really, really difficult. But during this time, I was still kind of going to church, but we had found a place just south of Provo in Springville and decided to move out on our own, because at that point we were both living separately. And that's the moment that looking back, my faith and testimony journey actually started to grow again. I didn't see it then, but now I see it as a huge blessing. It was probably the biggest blessing I've had, in the sense of just being able to move out to an apartment in Springville, not the exact place I really wanted to be. I wanted to buy a house, of course. When you're married, you want to buy a home. Was just renting an apartment. And we had now it's called ministering, but it was home teaching at the time.
Yeah.
And that man is so wonderful. He came all the time. I feel like it was weekly. It probably wasn't quite that much, but he would come give us lessons. I would kind of go to church with I would have had 2 kids at that time, almost 3. And he was just always there. And my job started getting really dicey. I started getting really stressed. I always expressed to him how hard it was. And he was a director over another company that was pretty large here in Provo, actually. And he goes, well, why don't you just come work for me? You're an awesome dude. I come talk to you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, like maybe I'll think about it. I submitted an application. They actually offered me the job. And I said no, because I was so nervous to leave, because I loved cars. I loved what I did, but I just didn't like the people I worked with. Negative atmosphere, not a good place to be. And so I declined it initially. 2 months later, again, he's home teaching, ministering to me at our home. And he goes, I'm going to offer you the job one last time. I guarantee you'll be so much happier, and you'll be, all these things. And I just was so nervous, and I took a jump. I took a leap, something completely different, not even related to anything I knew. And he just saw it. I think he saw the light in me, like, hey, you need to get out of this rut. And there was really, like, come to think of it, there was really he wasn't pushing me to church. He wasn't doing this. He was just trying to guide me and say, hey, like, I've been through where you've been through. I'm a little bit older than you. I've gone through challenges. I'm trying to help you. And that was huge. That making that jump to that job was massive for my career, where I'm at now. And then probably a year later, we had the opportunity to purchase a home. It was in Provo. So back to Provo, where I was comfortable. Our family was there. And then again, a ministering home teacher came, and this guy is like wonderful too. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, these people keep popping into my life, and they're just wonderful. But at the time, I wasn't seeing it that way. I was just like, oh, here comes another church guy trying to do his church thing,
Yeah.
And this was a very rough period, because my relationship was kind of crumbling with my then wife. And we had 4 kids at that time. And
how old were you at that time?
I probably would have been 23, probably about 23.
Okay. And you were working in what field?
Website hosting.
Okay.
Yeah, large website hosting company.
Cool.
So yeah, I was probably about 22, 23, and was just kind of going through the motions. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere a lot of times. I just was like, come home, she would work at night, I would work during the day, and I just didn't feel like there was really much there. There was no hope. I loved my job at that time. Like, it was so fun. People I worked with were very energetic and caring, and it was awesome. But my relationship was so bad. It was just, there was a lot of things that were not right that I was doing, maybe that she was doing as well. And it just wasn't a very good relationship. And in 2017, we split up and then officially got divorced in 2018. And at that same time, that job that I loved, they announced a company-wide layoff. They were moving it to another state. And at that same time, we were also selling our home because we were getting divorced.
Ugh. All piling up.
Yeah. And I'm just sitting here like, how is this all hitting me at one time? Like, this is crazy. And it's funny to think about, because then I didn't think about it as necessarily a trial. I just felt like it was something that I created, in some weird way, like that I made these mistakes and there may be no coming back from it. I had this job that I loved and I was like, man, did I make the wrong choice by working on cars and now switching to this website hosting company? Mm-hmm. And so then what happened, we sold our home. I actually moved back with my parents, back in my home ward that I grew up in. I knew a lot of people in that ward still, because we lived pretty close in Provo when we moved. Loved them all, and they were all wonderful, but I wasn't going to church. I said, no, I'm not going to church, but my parents would bring my kids to my home ward that I grew up in, because I trusted those people. They were wonderful. Was your
ex-wife a member?
She was. Yeah,
okay.
She was actually a convert at about 9 or 10 years old.
Okay.
Yep, grew up in Provo. She was in Provo as well.
Okay.
So, but we just didn't have that atmosphere of like going to church anymore. It was kind of like we just fell apart, her and I, and then we both were like, well, we don't need to go to church anymore. When I moved back in with my parents, I love my parents to death. They are the most wonderful parents ever that I could have ever asked for. But living with them at that age, oh my goodness, it was a little rough.
Yeah.
On both sides, I'm sure.
Sure.
And I put my parents through the ringer in some ways through high school and having a kid and stuff. Again, there was still the church involved. Like there were still people involved. There were still people that I knew, and they're reaching out and talking to me, and wonderful neighbors in that neighborhood. And then I finally found my own place about 6 months later. So that 6 months was a little rough. I don't want to talk too much about that, but no, it's fine.
I think we all feel that way.
Yeah.
Living with our parents.
Yeah. Going from like being on your own. Totally.
You're saints, mom and dad.
Yes, they are. So I moved out on my own again, back to actually Springville, where I was living before. Not the same area, a little bit different area.
Okay.
And really, at that point in my life, all I was focused on was making sure I found a job that was good enough to provide for my kids, as well as trying to find the new me, because I was divorced. I didn't know who I was anymore. I needed to find my image,
Were you taking care of the kids at this time?
Yeah.
Full time?
Yeah. So it was actually 50-50, and it still is.
Okay.
So 50% with her, 50% with me.
Sure.
It was a tough situation then, because they were back and forth so much that it made them have a little bit of a rough time. Mm-hmm. So now it's more stable as far as like when they're with us. Okay. Usually Sundays, to be honest, weekends.
They've all got to be teenagers now.
My oldest is 14 this year. Yeah, in a couple months she'll be 14.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's a whole different ball field now. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like, I love kids, but my goodness. So when I moved to Springville, back to Springville, I was trying to find a new me. I was actually hiking a lot. I had lost 50 pounds. I had done a big diet. So it wasn't like that I was like doing something bad to lose that weight. I needed to lose the weight. Mm-hmm. Was hiking a lot, picked up a second job. And then my wife now, she messages me on Facebook. And we had met a long time previous when I was like 14, 15 years old. Out boating, actually. We happened to connect when we were out boating, and we were out cliff diving with them and stuff with their family. It was super fun. She messages me on Facebook and she goes, "Hey, your kids are super cute." And I'm like, that's kind of a low blow to me, because she didn't say I was cute. She said my kids were cute, And that moment, if she didn't send that message to me, I don't know if I'd be where I'm at now. And it was probably a huge pivotal moment in my life. And her and I started talking. We started going on dates. We're kind of off and on there for a little bit, because she had been divorced as well. No kids from her marriage. And that was huge because it got me to start dating and start feeling comfortable with myself and that it was okay to date because I felt nervous.
Yeah.
And
Maybe gaining a little bit of confidence back as well.
yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Definitely like confidence. It's hard when you've been married that long and then you get divorced and have kids.
Yeah.
That's totally true. Yeah. And then I was able, my wife and I, my wife now, she was my girlfriend then, we actually broke up for a little while. And during that time period, I think we just needed to figure each other out. I think we needed that space away. And her and I eventually got back together and started dating again. And I had purchased a home in Spanish Fork, so a little bit further south of Springville. And she had a home all the way up in Salt Lake. And we got back together and we actually started talking with each other and trying to figure out, hey, like she was raised in the church, I was raised in the church, and we actually started going to church together.
Was she active at that time, or you both were just like, let's make this more of a priority?
Yeah, I would say that we were semi-active.
Okay.
So when I had my kids, she would come all the way down from Salt Lake, so about an hour drive to my home and my home ward. And then when I didn't have my kids, I would drive up to her in Salt Lake, and we would actually go to her singles ward because she wasn't married or had kids or anything. So she'd go to singles ward, which was really, really oddly quiet during sacrament. When you're getting a family ward, it's a little,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a little bit, but it was good. It was
Yeah.
really, really good. And eventually, we came around and started going to church more and started becoming more active. Went to her parents. Her parents are awesome. I love her parents to death. And I went to her parents, like the strangest situation to go say, hey, I would really love to marry your daughter, which I think they were a little hesitant. I don't blame them because here I am, I have 4 kids. I luckily didn't like financially was fine. And they had a little bit of concern, you could tell, but they were okay with it.
Yeah.
And I think that moment made me realize like this may happen. Like I may get remarried again. And what do I need for my kids? Because not only is my wife amazing and she's super smart, has a master's degree, taught special education for 10 years, preschool kids, but she's willing and able to take on 4 stepkids.
She's a saint, essentially. Is what you're saying. Yeah,
totally. And I don't know how she did it even then, but she is so amazing. And we did it. We got married and just civilly. And now I'm in a place where church is a priority. And we actually just had our child, our first child together. And he's 1 year old now. And she is the most amazing mother. I can't say enough about her. Oh my gosh. But, and we started making church a priority in our life. We always, if it was early morning church, we would wake up really early, get the kids ready, go to church. If we didn't have the kids, we would still go to church because it would be easy to make an excuse, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm a deacon's quorum advisor, and she, it's just mostly a stay-at-home mom. She runs a business as well, and now she's in the process of getting a temple divorce, which in general is kind of sad. You don't want that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But she never had any kids and never really had that much relationship with her ex-husband. And we're going through that process, and we're going to the temple today, actually.
Oh, really?
Just her and I, not for the sealing,
Okay.
but just with my daughters that are old enough to go.
Yeah.
But we're going to go today to the temple, and it's just looking back on everything, like to the moment that I had a kid at 17 years old to finally finding a place on my own, with my wife then when I was married to her. I didn't realize this until I got divorced, actually, that I felt so alone when I was divorced. I was like, there's no one here for me. My parents were there, obviously, because they're always there for me. I had some really close friends who I attend the temple with currently, which is really nice, that reached out and I talked to, but I just needed to find me, and I couldn't figure that out. And one day I was sitting there, and I actually drove to my grandmother's grave site, because I had a really good relationship with her when I was younger. And I just sat there and bawled my eyes out. Just like, what do I do? And like, why am I here? Like, what am I doing? Like, what's my purpose? And just even thinking about it now, I get a little emotional. But, and what came to me in that moment was just pray. Like, there is someone there. Like, someone created this world and created water, the air we breathe, us humans. You're not alone in all of this. So that's what I started doing at that moment. When I was getting divorced, laid off, selling my home, I just started praying. And when I think about it more, it's God was putting these people in my place, not because he wanted me to get divorced, not because he wanted me to lose my job, because he knew that if and when I decided to turn to him, that these people would be here to put me in the position of succeeding of what I want in my life. But only if you turn to God and Jesus Christ through prayer, through attending church, through getting a calling and serving those that may need help. And now I'm able to do that in my ward, and these people, from the home teachers ministering, for those that are a little bit younger that don't know what home teaching was, those people are in my life for a reason. And I don't talk to those ministering people very much. If they watch this show, hopefully they'll see it and realize what an impact they made on my life. But those people were in my life for a reason. And turning to God through prayer and just attending church and doing all that has drastically changed my life.
By small and simple things,
yeah,
do great things come to pass, right?
Definitely, yeah.
As the Book of Mormon teaches, I love that. I love the idea that, like, despite everything, despite the challenges you were going through, despite maybe you stepping away a little bit from the church or from God, despite all those things, like, you can still pinpoint moments where you can see God's hand along the way, in your life. Like, despite what we do, he's going to be there, and he's going to keep that hand outstretched, and we just gotta take it. And it sounds like he was just waiting for that, for when that was going to happen for you. And thank you for your story.
Totally. I mean, anytime I think the biggest thing for me is realizing that we're not alone in all this. As much as you may feel alone, you're not. There's someone there. I tell my youth group all the time, hey, like, if you guys need anything, reach out to me. They're wonderful. Deacons are awesome. They just always are mingling with each other, playing football, picking on each other, whatever it may be. But that was the biggest part, was like realizing you're not alone and recognizing the people that can bring you success. And mine just so happened to be members of the church.
Yeah. And I love to see that structure, the structure of the church working. Yeah. Because we're all imperfect in the church.
Oh, yes.
Some of us aren't the best ministers, but but you can see God's hand in it.
Yes.
You can see him working through, members of the church. And it doesn't have to just be members of the church. God works through, can work through anyone regardless of of their faith.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask what advice you had for people, but I think that you already answered that question with, remembering that we're not alone. For those of you who have further questions for Jordan, he actually lives under a rock.
Yes.
So you're not going to find him.
Very big rock.
A very big rock right next to Patrick Starr. You're not going to find him on social media, but they can leave comments on the YouTube video, and he'll check those out if you have any thoughts for him. Thank you for being here today.
Definitely. I've loved it. This has been awesome.
And everybody, we'll see you next time.